So I welcome everybody and thank you for turning up on a Sunday morning, which is never easy to do. Certainly it wasn't easy for me. I'm one of those who sleeps late. So I decided to do this because last year when I came to the photography show and I was on a panel on the Turn Pro stage, and we were just talking, it was a bit of an interview about turning pro, and we were all discussing with another couple of photographers what it meant for us and what were the challenges at the beginning, what we wish we'd known to start off with. And it was interesting, but what blew me away was that on both panels, both days, the amount of people coming to me to ask, how do I do that, wanting to know more about it, was amazing. So I thought, there really isn't anything that helps people make the right decision in the right way, because there's so many aspects to becoming a photographer. It's not just, I'm going to be a photographer, now what, and also to feel a bit more confident and know how to tackle the challenges that are, inevitably coming your way. So I have decided to expand on this. And I'll tell you later, I made a whole program on it. But today, I just wanted to touch on a few points. I have a few notes because my brain's like a squirrel. So I'm going to be looking at them. But I'm going to touch on a few points that may be useful to you if you are thinking of becoming a full-time photographer or taking it up as a job or as a part-time job. I mostly work with portrait and wedding photographers, so it's mostly geared towards people who work with private people, not companies. But there's a lot of things that, whether you want to get into fashion or commercial photography or any other kind, architecture, any other kind of photography, you really need to think about right at the start. Even making that decision is a big decision. I remember when I decided to set up as a photographer, I was in Austria. I've been working in fashion in Milan a couple of decades. I'm not going to tell you how long ago, a long time ago, but let me just say that was like the golden age of fashion in Milan. That's where I was. And I was an image editor, and I was on the other side of the barricade, and I worked with some of the best photographers at the time. But then when I moved to Austria, and I thought, my passion is really always to be behind the camera, not just next to it. And so I made this, eventful decision to go for it. And right at the beginning, even going like, yeah, go for it and do what? Because I didn't want to do fashion in Austria. That the two things that really happen. So, it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do and how I was supposed to do it. And then to realize that it is running a business. And as they say, if you run a business like a business, it'll pay you like a business. And if you run a business like a hobby, it'll cost you like a hobby. And over the past 5 years or so, 6, I've seen that a lot of photographers start because of their passion. And that is fantastic, because that's going to obviously make all the difference. You become a photographer because you love it, you want to do it all day, and it's the best job in the world if you love photography, obviously. But at the same time, when you get into it, you realize that that's not the case. You're not going to be doing photography all day long. There's a whole string of things that you need to do day in and day out to actually make this thing work as a job, as a business, as your work. So what happens is that there is an initial enthusiasm, and then after a while there's the first few problems and challenges, and doing all of the day-to-day running of it and decision making, and setting your prices, figuring out what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, how you're going to delete. There is so much to it, and finding your clients. that it's sad to see how many people get discouraged or are really struggling, and even photographers that have been doing it for a few years, they run into, problems, and sometimes it takes a long time to figure them out and get back on track and get things rolling again. So, which is the reason why I decided to make courses and help, because that's my thing. I love to help people thrive. So what happens is you start off and you do it because of your passion. But let me tell you, no photographer ever became a photographer because they have an entrepreneurial mind, right? So there's usually a lot of creativity, a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot of passion, but very, very little experience or even just the right mindset to run a business. If you had an entrepreneurial mind, you'd probably be starting up something else, something that actually makes money. And I'm not saying that photography doesn't make money, because it does, absolutely, you can. But at the start, it's not about the photography, especially as you grow. It's really the decisions you have to make are not just about photography. It's not just about having a really good portfolio or going to workshops and improving your photography and showing your work. Unfortunately, your work is not what's going to make your business thrive. Your photos need to be good. They need to be professional quality. They need to be up there. They need to be, good. And, the difference between professional and amateur, I always said, it's not about the quality of photography. It's about the fact that as a professional, you need to deliver on that day. If I book you to shoot anything, I expect you to turn up and to take photos no matter how, if there's problems, if there's technical problems, if it's pouring with rain, if anything, the light is bad, doesn't matter. You're supposed to come home with some photos. When you're taking pictures as an amateur, you can go and do that 1,000 times. Nobody's paying you for it. Nobody's pushing you for it. There's no deadlines. There is no timelines. And you can really, go about it in your own way. And then turn up with amazing photos, and which is great. And I know amateur photographers who are more skilled than professionals. The difference is not the quality of the photography. The difference is, how do you deliver your work? Can you deliver your work on the day? So that's one thing that people may not think about. And that, of course, puts some pressure on us when we start, because are we sure, we're going to go and shoot this family portrait or this baby portrait or this wedding. Weddings are incredibly high pressure things, because, of course, you can't shoot that again. You can't do that twice. You can't make a mistake. So maybe that's not the best thing to start with, unless you've been working with another photographer as an assistant, so you have some experience and you know what you're doing. So in the end, at the beginning, I think the biggest question is like, what are you meant to do? There is something that is in photography that is really calling to you. Or maybe you already made the decision to start and to start working, to get your first clients, to get, this work on the road, whether as a part-time or a full-time, because this really applies to anyone who's kind of moving first steps into this profession. And as you walk into it, you are going to find, all the difficulties, challenges, and just the everyday work that needs to be done that is around the bit of photography. You find that you're going to be spending probably 80% of your time doing things that are not photography. And so that is really important too. It's really important to understand whether you like that, because if you're not going to like doing all these other things, then you are going to be, you know, a little bit stressed out by them. And then, you know, the joy goes away, and that's not nice. I always say that when you put the weight of your livelihood on your passion, it's very easy to kill it. And so this is what we're here for today, is to make sure that we don't make that mistake. Because I have seen so many people just get really discouraged and quit when they really, there's no reason for it, because it's not that hard, okay? I'm making it sound like, whoa, what's going to happen? But it's really not that hard if you know what you're doing, if you have a plan, and if you know where are the pitfalls and what are the things you need to be careful about. So you don't really just know what to do. Okay, I always say the photography will take care of itself, because it is your passion. You're going to be playing with it all the time. You have been playing with it a lot, and you've improved, and your photos now are better than they were a year ago, and your photos next year will be better than they are now, no matter what you do. As long as you shoot, you're going to get better. So that goes by itself. Yes, you will also go to a few workshops or buy a few courses or whatever it is, learn how to edit better. All of those things are just part of what we love to do. It's our toys, you know, it's what we love to play with. So of course it's going to get better. So photography is not the problem. The problem is that what doesn't get better, unless you learn a bit about it, is how to run it as a business. And so awareness of that is really important. And awareness of, you know, what makes your heart sing? What can you do all day and never get tired? What is the thing that you just cannot live without anymore? What's the thing that will make you, you know, chuck everything and go for it? Because you do need to have like a really strong motivation, a really strong drive to start setting up a business by yourself. I've seen it this year quite a lot because of COVID, because of lockdown. Some people have lost their jobs. Some people had just started in photography a few months before or last year and decided, yeah, over the next few years, I'm going to make the switch. I'm going to, you know, see where it goes and see how it goes. But in the end, it's just made everything faster. All decisions have had to be made quicker. Some people, like, you know, have lost their jobs, or they decided that their jobs are not worth going back to, or, you know, whatever it is. So there is a moment where you decide and you make a commitment. And this is really important. You make a commitment. It's a bit like what Youre used to say, you do or you do not. There is no try. You make a commitment, and you make a commitment to go for it and make it work. There will be ups and downs and, you know, some, I use the word pain, but not because pain in terms of failure, although, you know, like it fails spectacularly is great because you learn a lot from it. There will be some failures, but it's more about growing pains. You know, you're going to be growing into a person, not just a photographer that you were not before. And so there are things that are going to be a bit baffling, and there are things that you're not going to be so sure about. And it will definitely push you out of the comfort zone. But the choice of going pro and committing to it, you know, it's just something that it is going to change your life, obviously. And it's going to, you can create a fantastic life for yourself. And so I'm so passionate about this stage of the proceedings, because it's just lovely to see, like, you know, this kind of full-hearted sort of going into something that has been maybe calling you for a long time. And now you're answering it, and or maybe you already have, and you go like, yes, but now that I've started, what do I do? So having, I put myself there as a little sort of guide and a mentor to people, and it really helps speed up the process. I also think that one of the most amazing things about going into business for yourself is that it will show you a lot about yourself. You will have to do so much work, and it's just that you will have to do. You will have to do it, but you will want to do it. And it will be so amazing to do this work on yourself to really understand what you want, what makes you tick, and not just what you want, but who you are, how strong you are, how resilient you are. You're going to discover things inside you that you didn't know you had. You're going to discover things and then parts of you that you didn't know, and you're going to go like, whoa, you know, you can really sort of kick ass, like they say, and you know, go out there and make it happen. It does not happen if you're only half-heartedly dabbling into it. As with anything that you want to do, you make a decision. There needs to be a commitment, and then you go all out. And you look for the people, whether it's me or others, who can help you along the way, because there's no need to reinvent the wheel every time. So other photographers or people who've done this before, who can give you a push and a help and a shove in the right direction, and help when you know, have questions. But that is something that is probably at the very start of everything. I have a question here, so I'm going to answer it. I love photography and really feel I have imposter syndrome when thinking about becoming a professional photographer. Do you have any suggestions to get over this? Now, this is a really, really good question. I know that everybody on webinars and things says, oh, this is a really good question. Yes, it is a really good question. I'll tell you my story. When I decided to become a photographer, even if I had all that experience, I was never a photographer. I picked up my camera first when I was 12, at 9. At 12, I had my first published portrait on the back of a book, and I was so proud of that. But then I got into it on the other side. So I worked with photographers. I was very successful in my field. I worked for the biggest magazines, and I did loads of campaigns, all sorts of things. But I never really put myself out there as a photographer, even if I really wanted to do it. So when I did do it, and I made a website and I put my first photos out there, I remember that moment when I created this little website and I had to push that publish button up at the top. And I remember that moment like now, you know, it's almost like an eventful moments of my life when I was dreading it. And it's silly because when you hit publish, nobody knows you're there. You know, it's not like you hit publish and the world goes, wow, Fabrizia just said she's a photographer. Nah, nobody knows unless you send them a link. And then you know you're going to have to send a link to your friends and family first because you don't know any clients. And so that's really, really scary. And that is the imposter syndrome full-fledged. And then as you go on, it doesn't really go away. And it doesn't go away for a long time. Actually, I know photographers who are still feeling it after years and years and years in the business. They still think there's this thing about being found out, that you're not quite there, then you're not good enough. That what do you think you're doing, calling yourself a photographer? That is like, what? But you know what? That is all in our heads. And that's when I was saying the majority of this work is going to be inside in your head. 80% of the work is your mindset. And so whether it's about money, managing money, getting paid, that really comes into it. Feeling like you can't call yourself a professional photographer because you're not good enough or your photos are not good enough. We are our worst critics. Obviously, you know, people will put likes on your photos and slap you back and say, that's great, you know, all day long. But then at the end of the day, you are your worst critic, and you go like, yeah, people say I'm good, but I'm not really good. Because then you see other people and you compare yourself to others, and you, when you start comparing yourself to the rest of the world, you're comparing yourself to what they show, you know, and there's other people out there, they compare themselves to you and what you show, and they go like, oh gosh, she's so good, I can never do that. How can I call myself a photographer when anonymous attendee, I don't know who you are, is doing this work. So it's all really, really, it's all really, really relative. And we live in our own head, in our own world. And so we feel like imposters. There is no imposter syndrome if you're honest and humble, which anybody at any age, at any range, at any height, any guru, if you talk to the biggest gurus in the industries, they are the humblest people who know their limitations. They know what they do well. They're aware of what they can do well and what they don't. And they stick to their own stuff that they know and sometimes don't venture out into other things. And I'm not afraid to say it. Being honest, authentic, and being yourself and just going out and that is what is going to draw people to you. And you can call yourself a professional photographer or a writer or a singer. Every creative has the same exact issue with this thing. If you start singing, if you start acting, if you start writing, if you want to write a book, if you want to do any of that stuff, you're going to feel like, who am I to call myself a professional, writer, singer, photographer, painter, anything. So just put that in perspective. 99% of the people who started this work feel exactly like you, and probably 50% of the people who've done it feel like you. I had to go through the same thing when I started coaching. How can I call myself a professional coach? And then the thing is, then I help people. And people then start, they get results. And that's just the way it is. And I love what I do. I have a few more questions, and I want to go through them quickly because I think we don't have a lot of time. But if I can get to something, then do you want to read them for me, and if you've already read them, because otherwise it takes longer?
Yes, of course. You can hear me okay? This is all still a bit of a test.
I got that. Okay. Do you have to have any formal training to start photography business? No, you don't. You don't have to go to, I never went to photography school or university, but that doesn't mean you should not have training. And what it means is you have to study, whether you study photography from somebody else because you go and help them, you have to study the techie things of it, the basic stuff of like shutter speeds and, putting a camera in manual and making it work, lights, flashes, although you may choose not to use them. So that's not really important, but it doesn't have to be a formal training. But as with anything, you're going to want to know what you're talking about and what you're doing. So formal training, the training is what you make of it. You can be self-taught and be, amazing. So that's good. Actually, this is slipping up so fast.
Fabrizia, we've had a question from somebody on the chat on how to choose a web domain. What's your advice on choosing a web domain?
Your name, especially if you're doing personal photography. That's the best thing. A, because no one else has it. B, because it's all about you. We are our photography. Gone are the days, unless you want to build a different business model, like you want to build a big studio where you're going to employ 20 photographers to work for you and you have that plan in mind, which is fine, but that's a business decision. I'm saying 99% of people don't want to do that. So if it's about you, it's your connection to your clients, it's your way of putting yourself forward. I say right at the beginning of anything, one thing you need to remember is people buy why you do stuff and not what you do. What you do is secondary. Why you do it and who you are and what you bring personally into your picture, that's what people are attracted to. People, and if you think about where you go and buy your stuff or the restaurants you go back to, yes, the food has to be good, but actually you go back there because of the atmosphere, because they treat you a certain way, they remember you, they make a fuss about you, or it's just a lovely experience. So it doesn't really matter what you call yourself, but I always say, if you can use your name, because you are going to be the person running it, making it, putting your face on it, and creating a brand. out of yourself, basically.
Thank you. What's the best advice you have for somebody who wants to become a fashion photographer?
Right, fashion photography is pretty hard at the moment, mainly because fashion magazines have gone pretty much down the drain. In terms of, publications are more difficult. Not many people buy magazines, and a lot of magazines actually have been swamped by photographers who work for free. So getting into fashion photography is not that difficult if you're willing to work for free. But, not everybody can do that long term. So if you're doing it as a hobby, you can build yourself a portfolio of fashion photography and cooperating with some magazines. If you know anyone, even if it's a local thing, you can start having some things out there. It takes longer, and it's a little bit more difficult at the moment because also times are so uncertain. And so what worked up until, last year may not work next year. But if you really love fashion, start shooting it, start posting it, start creating a following, because a lot of magazines will also look at that. And it's a bit like, starting to sing. If you sing and you're good, and you're on YouTube, and you have 1 million followers, then a record company is going to snatch you up, and start publishing you or paying you for it. So it is a matter of building your own career. And this applies to a lot of other areas as well. When you're working with private clients or companies, you're actually then marketing and pitching. And you can pitch, obviously, fashion photography as well. And you can pitch fashion photography as a commercial side, right? Not necessarily to magazines. I did a lot of campaigns for fashion houses that were then printing or advertising campaigns or advertorials, they call them, which are more fun to do. So learn and find out about all these different aspects and make a list of who your clients will be, and then find a way to reach them with a solid portfolio. When you build a portfolio, remember this really important rule. Your portfolio is as strong as your weakest photo. So I'd rather see 5 bang on amazing pictures than 30 where these 5 are kind of diluted into a sea of mediocre stuff. Yes, so just be merciless with yourself when you're actually building your portfolio.
We've got 2 minutes left for a very quick question.
Questions after the thing. Okay, I'll tell you what, before we close, you can contact me, and I'm really accessible on Facebook. I'm Fabrizia Costa 39. You can also have a look. You can pick up a free training on turning pro at fabriziacosta.com turn pro. I can share a screen, show you what it looks like, if I can, in 1 second. And so what happens there, if you do that, let me share a screen just 1 second to show you what it looks like. And if you want to make a note, it's easy. Fabrizia Costa -OTB, Outside the Box, is my professional course, which is also for some of you maybe best, but that's another story. FabriziaCosta-OTB.com. So you can sign up on the Turn Pro thing and grab a free training. And that way you will have you'll be on the website, you can send me an email and you can ask questions, or you can contact me on Facebook. I'm going to stop sharing now because we're out of time. And I will quite happily answer whatever questions you may have, whether it's today or any other time. And if you then want to do this course, I will send an email to everyone in the next few days. There'll be a 50% off for everyone, signing through TPS, because I really want to help. And so do get in touch, because the time is really short and I wish I could talk to you for hours, but I can't. But we can also make another, if you're interested, I'm quite willing to do another webinar Also, I have yeah, get on Facebook. It's easier. There's too many places where you can turn up and see me. But
Fabrizia, what I think we'll do is there have been a few more questions, as you've probably seen. So I'll note those down. We'll go through them after the show, and we'll come back to you guys. We'll stick the answers to them on social, or just look out for the photography show and Fabrizia's tags. So we'll answer those as best we can. Fabrizia, thank you so much for getting up early on a Sunday to do this.
And, that's okay, it doesn't matter.
We hope you all enjoyed the session, and onwards.